Hello and welcome. I don't have a podcast name yet, but I'm thinking of calling it the Running and Lifting Nurse or the Thriving Women podcast. So I would love to hear after I air this episode what your thoughts are on a name, whether you like the Running and Lifting Nurse or you like the Thriving Women podcast. Thriving Women is the name of my program, but I wanted this to actually be more about myself selfishly and less about the coaching side of things. I actually really wanted to share my journey. I'm going to be turning 40 this year, and I found myself really being absorbed and involved in other women's stories of how, in sort of the second half of their life, they started pursuing these goals. And so I have some really, really big goals. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today on the podcast. Um, that I just found I loved following along on their story and how they overcame these sort of challenges in midlife that we don't have sort of in the beginning part of our life in our 20s and our 30s. And you could technically say I'm still in my 30s, but I sort of think of myself as being in this era of 40. And I'm really excited for it actually because every decade, I feel like I like myself better. I know myself better and I treat myself better. So I'm really excited for my 40s. I don't, this whole like it's all downhill after 40, I think that's fucking bullshit. I feel like I'm just starting to live to my full potential. I finally know who I am to such a greater degree than I did in my 30s. And I like myself so much more. And I'm doing so much work every day to improve myself that I'm like, okay, if I'm doing this much work, like I am going to be so much farther and I'm going to love myself so much more because I'm really working to get all that shit out. And not that I wasn't doing that in my 20s and 30s. I was. And that's the cool part is like I just see how much farther along I am now. And so let's back this up a little bit and give you some context about how this whole thing, journey, goal thing came about. So really, last year, July 2022, maybe 20, I'm going to get the dates mixed up. A year and a half ago, whatever year that was, I apologize, my math is terrible. My dad had a significant health event and my whole life changed. My family's life changed. He went from a guy who owned multiple businesses, multiple properties. He just had a lot of things and had a lot of responsibilities. He wasn't able to take care of those things anymore. So they were kind of dispersed to my family. And the same week, I had launched my business and I was working as a nurse. And, that next year, I just like ground myself into the ground trying to, help my family with my dad's stuff, build my business, and, just reach these goals that I had. And last summer, I just really found myself so profoundly exhausted. And I've shared this before. And it wasn't like anything physically was wrong with me. I literally felt like my life force was zero. And so I started to look around for other things. I couldn't actually, I was so embarrassed that I had burnt myself out despite thinking that I was taking care of myself. And so I really had to dig deep and look at all the things I was doing and how I ended up in this burnout place again. And that was when I discovered the difference of like rest and calm and feminine energy. I was like living in this masculine energy of like, logic and thinking and get shit done and the grind and the hustle and working so hard, just, you know, stretching myself so thin. And I really had to learn how to, come into sort of this feminine of, rest, quiet, and actually like asking myself what I really wanted in this life. Like, I always had big goals, but I always attributed them to like the universe. I always called it God, that like God had put these things on in my heart. So they weren't actually really my goals. I never actually asked myself what I wanted to, what I wanted my purpose in life to be. I always felt like it was God's job to show me those things. And so because I wasn't going to church and I didn't really, you know, buy into the Christian belief system anymore, I started asking myself those things and started self-sourcing those things. And so this was like a really huge period of growth for me and just aha moments, and about how the energy that we put out into the universe, we get back. And I was always terrified of the next bad thing happening. And literally, that's what always happened. Like, bad things always happen to me. Like, who has two family members get severe sepsis within 2 years of each other? Like, that doesn't happen to anyone. Like, my husband had it, and then my dad had it. And so these things just kept happening. And so the fear it wasn't like there for no reason. Like, legit shitty things, a lot of shitty things happened to me in my life. But I just sort of realized I was perpetuating this. And so I decided I was going to believe for good things, and I was going to pursue things that I had always been afraid to pursue before, because I was like, what about this bad thing happening? And this is, I'm summarizing a lot in a very, that this all happened over, like many, many months, but I'm summarizing it in a very short period of time. So this unfolding of this sort of reflection and understanding and what happened over a longer period of time than I'm making it sound like. But I really realized while I was digging into myself and doing shadow work and ego stuff, that I always kept myself so small. Like, small as in I wasn't successful. I would always have something that, you know, prevented me from succeeding. And I came to learn and understand that this was my subconscious mind protecting me and sort of fulfilling what I believed about myself. I never wanted to get too big for my britches, or be so successful that I made other people feel bad about themselves. I wanted to be in the spotlight, but I also was like, oh, but that's wrong. That's bad. That's selfish. And so I had to like really work through those things, because like I said, I learned that your subconscious mind is going to make what you believe true. And so these things would happen to me. In my business, or sorry, in sort of CrossFit and my CrossFit competition career, whatever you want to call that, I was always injured. And, oh, I can't do a muscle up because, I injured my shoulder. Or there was always these narratives about why I couldn't do something. And that was a really big aha moment. And so when I realized that, I was like, okay, fuck, that's not going to be my story anymore. And so what do I want to do that I always told myself wasn't possible before? And one of those things was to get really fucking strong, the strongest I've ever been. And really, when I thought about it, I was like, why is it that I couldn't become the strongest I've ever been at over 40? There's no reason why. Physiologically, there's no reason why I can't get stronger. In our mind, in society's expectation, we're like, oh, it's downhill after 40, so of course you're not going to be stronger. But then I started looking for evidence that, women could get the strongest they've ever been in 40. And I found lots of women who started powerlifting, who started lifting, who were still PRing into their 50s, and it isn't really until our 60s physiologically that we start to lose strength. And so I decided, okay, fuck, I'm going to do this. This is one of my bucket list items. I've always wanted to powerlift. So I joined a powerlifting gym. And so I'm working towards getting the strongest I've ever been. I was scared. I was really, really scared, because I had chronic back pain. I had been injured so much in CrossFit. And I just, put myself out there into the universe, believing that good was going to happen. And yes, there was pain. I have tweaked my back, but it was fine. And like, I just reminded myself that my body is strong. My body is really capable of healing, and it's going to be okay. And this is like, I will be successful. And so that was sort of the, September part of this journey in the fall, I guess you could say. And then, you know, randomly I'm in California and I'm like, huh, it's really beautiful beside the ocean. Like, I think I want to go running, which is, if you know me, I joke with my friends about how I anything more than 5 kilometers, like you will never get me to run more than 5 kilometers. I think it's completely useless to run any, length of time or any distance. So this was my attitude before for myself. Other people, go ahead, flat, whatever you do whatever you want. But for me, I was like, meh, I don't ever want to run more than 5K. And so I had this like thought and I was like, wow, that's really weird. And I come home and I text my friends. I'm like, I think I'm gonna run. And they're like, oh, I love it. Like, cool. They're always like trying to get me to join them. And I was like, no thanks. And so here I am deciding that I'm gonna become a runner and I'm gonna start running. And so, December, I didn't really do much with it. I think I headed out for a couple of runs, maybe. And then January comes around and I like to set goals for the year. These aren't like lose 50 pounds or something like that. I know how goals work. I don't set crazy goals, but I set intentions. Maybe that's better way of putting them. Things that I'm going to move towards intentionally, or things that are on my mind that I want to accomplish. So one of the things I set was to start running. And sadly, I was so, like, it's easy for me to see this now looking back. Sadly, I was so afraid of failing, of, an injury coming up for me, or because I had, it's not that I didn't run in the past. Every time I ran and did deadlifts, I always got this like nerve discomfort in my leg. And I'd been struggling with this for 10 years. So like a long ass time. And I was like, how is this going to happen? Like, how is this actually going to be physically possible for me? And so I sort of just set out with this goal of very general. I'm just gonna make it really simple so I don't, if I fail, I'm not like disappointing myself. I'm not disappointing anyone else. I don't have to look like a failure again because of my track record with CrossFit. And I was just really scared. And so a friend, um, he's like challenged me on it. He's like, why? And so I sort of set like a little goal. I was like, okay, I can run a 10K at Boogie the Bridge, which is a local run. And he's like, why are you keeping your goal so small? Like, he's like, you could easily he's like, you don't even have to train and you could do that. You could walk that. And I had to step back and really just consider, why was I keeping myself so small again? Why was I keeping myself in this box of, oh, well, I'm for sure going to get injured. Like, what if I fail at this? What if I put it out there and I don't make it and everyone just like looks at me and I'm a huge fat failure? And that was really, really scary, but liberating at the same time. And so I was like, you know what? Fuck that. I'm gonna set a big goal. I'm gonna do a half marathon. And so I put it out in the universe and I was like, oh, it's out there now. It's scary as hell. And you know what? It's now, what is it today? February 9th. So I think I've been training for about 5 weeks officially. I'm using an app. And you know what? Yeah, I have some aches and pains and little niggly things that I'm working through, but I'm doing the things. And actually, that nerve discomfort that I was really worried about, you know what? It hasn't bothered me, which is crazy because it literally plagued me for years and years and years. Anytime I deadlifted and ran, for the next like 3 days, I would have numbness on my butt, and it was so irritating. And like yeah. Anyway, another story for another day. However, this go around not bothered me. Crazy, hey? And so here I am, 5 weeks in. None of the things I was terrified have happened. Like I said, I'm taking really good care of myself. I'm eating a lot. I'm really trying to rest and like I said, move into that feminine energy. And every time I try to like push harder, my body kind of pushes back a little bit and goes, Leah, you got to take care of yourself. So it's really good for me. And I'm doing the thing. I'm powerlifting and I'm running, fucking doing it. And so I'm just wanting to share that because when I listen to other women's stories and they're doing it and they're, the things they're afraid of are real. Like, I totally get the fear of being injured, having been injured for so many years on and off. Like, that was a really, really big fear for me. And the fear of failing. Like, I was really fucking afraid of failing. I've failed at some really big things. And while I am not afraid to fail, it feels fucking shitty. Like, when I think back to my gym and closing our gym, although I don't per se see that as a failure because I really feel like the universe was taking care of me in that moment, and that was meant to be the way that it was still really, really sad. Like, our baby, this thing we created, just died, and I had to mourn that for years. And I don't think I really understood how profoundly hard that was to lose that thing. And then when I started my business online, I had to work through the fear of failing again. And then last summer, when I was so exhausted, I again questioned, like, is this for me? Am I just a big fat failure? Like, why do I keep, doing this cycle? And so while like I said, I'm not afraid to try things and put myself out there because I might fail. I am at the same time afraid to fail, like any human. And so here I am, just as evidence that you can do those scary, big, scary things. You can put them out into the universe. And so I wanted to share this experience and share my experience for other people, because I don't know who it might inspire. Like, I was inspired by some random lady on YouTube I just happened to come across. The universe just put her in my path and implanted that little seed of an idea, and here we are 5 weeks later. I'm training to do a marathon. Oh my gosh, I said it out loud. I said it on the internet. So, like, it's a thing now. And so here we are. So that's the whole reason that I wanted to do this podcast, and why I wanted to make it more about me and more personal than about my coaching. I love to teach, and I love to coach people, and I love to share my knowledge. But I just wanted to invite you along on my journey, and how the journey to 40 and what that looks like. And I feel like this is going to be a really big year for me of growth, of epiphanies, of just really special things. And I do have a goal that I'm not ready to share yet. And so you're going to have to keep listening. It has to do with running and lifting, but I'm not ready to put it out there to the world yet. So you're going to have to stay tuned to find out what it is. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this. If you did, comment, make sure you like, and then if you, you know, want to talk about any of the things I'm doing, or you want to join along. I love hearing when people are like, hey, I'm doing the same thing. Having a little community, please feel free to message me on Instagram or Facebook. I seriously love hearing about other people who've listened to my podcast. Obviously, as someone, a creator, it really means a lot to me when it touches you or resonates with you, or you felt the same thing. So feel free to message me, and stay tuned for the next episode.